Everybody, welcome back with the Purplatypus' name, and welcome to another Pillars of Eternity 2 video. Wait, that's the wrong POE. Welcome to another Path of Exile 2 video. Yeah, I'm gonna do 5 hot takes today. This is my perspective as a newer ARPG player. I mean, I have like 100 hours, 200 hours in Diablo 2, about 5 hours only in POE 1, and now about 170 hours in POE 2. So I'm not a complete ARPG noob, but in the context of the ARPG gamer world, I am a super noob. But if you've never played ARPGs, I know more than you do. So I guess I'm a veteran noob, I guess, in the ARPG world. So yeah, let's go over 5 hot takes. First, one honorable mention, because I don't know if it's a hot take or not. I think POE 2 is the greatest ARPG that I've ever played. In my opinion, it's the best one made so far. I know maybe POE 1 is better for POE 1 enjoyers. However, as someone that has downloaded that game 7-8 times and gets really, really bored after 2 hours, I just think they're missing something. It might just be the Wasad. It might just be the dodge roll. It might be the class feel and the animations. I don't know, but I could not push through that game to get to the point where it got really good. I always got kind of blocked off, especially later when I downloaded the game and there was like a new season mechanic and there was some, I think it was called like Sentinel or something. I don't know, but there was these robots spawning things. It's just like, I didn't understand anything that was going on and it deflected me. All right. So maybe it's a better game for if you've played 1,000 hours, but as a new player, I didn't think it was as good. And so I think POE 2 is the greatest ARPG ever made. That's just an honorable mention. I don't even consider that a hot take. But first hot take, all right, number 1. I pretty much hate's a strong word. I dislike the crafting in this game, kind of full stop. It feels so Gamba all the time to me. Finding a drop that's perfect is actually kind of fun. I like that. But I hate finding like an item like this and I'm like, all right, here's the base that I want because it's white, you know. All right, I'm gonna do it. Okay, what do I get? Adds 40 cold damage. It doesn't work with my build. I'm totems. Well, okay, let's do another one. 12% attack speed. It doesn't work. I'm totems. I need 5 melee skills. So it's like, there's so many times, and early on it's not as bad because like just putting any random stat on any random piece of gear is like fine. But even by like Act 2, like I'm getting to the point where it's like I need these 3 stats in order for me to even consider this piece of gear. And so I'm putting the same orbs, I'm smashing orbs into the gear for hours, you know, just trying to find the basics that I need in order for it to not be a downgrade. And it's just it just feels like every single time I have to use one of these orbs, to me it feels like I'm gambling and hoping that I high roll. I'm like, oh baby, let's high roll. No, damn it. You know, it feels like that all the time. And I already feel like you get enough of that just from the gear dropping in general. Like you see a yellow drop and it's something you can equip and it's like an armor piece that you might want because it's like the next tier up or whatever. At least you get to identify it and see if it's good like that. But I just don't like smashing orbs into items myself. Is that it can be satisfying when you get exactly what you want. You're like, oh, when you put a blue orb and you get +3 melee skills or +5 melee skills. In fact, body armor is better. It's like, oh, I got 31% fire resist. Heck yeah, I regal it. I'm like, oh, I got 21 lightning resist. I regal it. I got cold resist. You know, I put exalted. I got cold resist. This is awesome. Like that could feel good when everything works out. But anytime you miss one of those, it's like, okay, this is probably a downgrade. So to me, it just feels like a casino. I don't particularly like it. I much preferred Last Epoch, where it felt like, and again, I didn't play as much Last Epoch because there's a lot of things I didn't like about that game as much, but I did really like when you went into the forge with the F button, you could put specific things on your gear because you would basically farm the currency and you could hit a button and it would all leave your inventory and go right into a little tab there. That felt great. And you're like, all right, I need HP percent, and I need skill up or, you know, damage up for lightning damage in this as well. And so you could kind of specifically start to forge gear, and you would find better gear with more forging potential that you could modify more later on. And so it was easier to get a piece of gear and then make it into something better with work. And this just feels like I'm gambling, disenchant, gamble on it, sell, disenchant, put it on the auction house, you know, put it on the trade site, but never actually use any of it. So I feel like all the gear I find is for me to put on this tab, this sell for exalts, and then take those exalts in trade form. I don't feel like I'm actually making stuff myself. I feel like I'm making stuff for other people and then trying to buy stuff for myself. that's just how I feel about it. Maybe 1,000 hours into PoE 2 when I have more understanding of how to use the things like the essences. Maybe if I ever found a grand essence, maybe if I had a better, you know, just idea of what bases and stuff to look for, I'll enjoy it more. But right now, I'm not a fan of it in general. Number 2, I think Magic Find is a terrible stat that should not exist in the game. I don't like it. As a kid, it was my favorite stat. It's a stat that I love economy builds in video games in general, right? I love sacrificing short-term power for long-term benefit. However, in an ARPG, this feels almost like the opposite of that. Is I'm not using this early to then generate more power later. The later I get, the more I want it because the more of an effect it has. You know, it's like if the baseline is in the beginning of the game, it might bring you from finding 1 exalted to 2 exalted in a campaign or something. But in the late game, it might bring you from finding 1 exalted to 20 exalted in 1 map or something, you know, if you have enough of it. Like, it just, so instead of sacrificing early game power for late game profit, it's like you're sacrificing late game power for more late game profit. So I don't like it because either magic rarity is really good and it feels mandatory to run it to either sustain your maps or just find improvements or just get more currency for other characters, right? So it's either so good that it feels essential, or it's bad, and if it's balanced where it's weak, then I don't want it on any of my gear anyway, and it's just taking up a slot like light radius, right? So I just don't like it in general. But beyond that, I also feel like it just adds another thing the devs have to balance around that isn't necessarily that valuable, because they have to balance the gear around magic rarity. Like, all right, what if a player has 300% magic rarity at this point? Whereas if everyone just has like a standard 100% magic rarity, you know, or whatever it is, the base throughout the whole campaign, they could fine tune the numbers to be very, very precise to what they want, and you can't really manipulate it too much. And in the late game, there is already a magic find system. They're outside of the gear. It's called maps, baby. You can already manipulate and add maps. Like, and when I say magic find, I guess I'm more specifically talking about it on gear. But when you go to, like, first of all, please add a map tab. But when you go to like maps, it's like you could find all like magic. Maybe there's something I can find something like this, right? Magic monsters, magic find. But basically, you could juice your maps to increase the difficulty, thus increase the level of the maps. That way you're getting more, just better items in general. You could get it with modifiers that increase it. You can get it with more monster packs, which gives you more chances to find stuff. So there's a bunch of ways built into the game already to modify the amount of currency and items and risk reward that you get to face through the mapping system. So having it on gear as well, to me, feels like a remnant of Diablo 2. And maybe it was in Diablo 1 too. I don't remember Diablo 1 that well, honestly. Diablo 2 was definitely there and I loved it, even though I think I would make the same argument for it now. But still, I think this feels like just an old thing that is more like a homage than it is something that's good for the game as a whole. All right, this one might be the hottest take. I don't know. Nah, there might be one more that's hotter than this. I'm not saying they shouldn't add it for people that do want it. I'm not going to be like upset if they do. However, I personally kind of enjoy not being able to respec ascendancies. Why do I say that? Why is less choice good? Well, I think you could think of a bunch of examples where less choice is good. Pillars of Eternity, which I referenced for earlier. It's one thing I really liked about, okay, I'm going to reference a couple games. Pillars of Eternity 2 versus Divinity Original Sin 2. I love both of these games a lot. One thing I liked about Pillars of Eternity 2 is you had very clear defined classes. The Chanter, the Paladin, things like that, they had a very even like in D&D, Baldur's Gate 3, your character learns very specific things as they level up because they're in a tight class. They can't just, like, you can multi-class in BG3, I understand, but the idea is like these are very unique classes with a lot of flavor, and they're like World of Warcraft. You're very much very broken necessarily in some way, but you have a huge weakness in another way, and that adds a lot of interesting dynamics within a game where you have to, like, you just can't do this thing. You know, warlocks can't teleport people to cities, but they can teleport people to them. They can't conjure water, but they have soul stones for their druids that can't frickin' revive anybody. You wouldn't want it on a druid, you'd put it on your paladin so they can actually, I hate druids in World of Warcraft. But the point is, I think there's a lot of examples where less choice can be good. And when you're picking a class in this game, your initial class, right? Warrior, ranger, mercenary, monk, witch, sorceress. I think that those aren't really restrictive classes. All they do really, and it's a big deal, but all they do is select where you start on this wheel, right? All they do is where they start here. But like if you're playing a witch, you get to start here, and if you're playing a sorceress, you get to start here. But if you're playing a monk, you start here. Like these aren't locked off to you as a monk, right? You could just it will be a little inefficient necessarily, in the early game at least, if you want to come over here and start getting this. And basically, like right now I'm building a spark based dark monk, right? Because that just sounded like a fun idea because of the instant mana leech and stuff like that. You know, point is you could kind of do whatever you want with every class. The only thing when you pick a class, the only thing that it really locks in is what your ascendancies are. So your ascendancy is really the one thing that you can't take back about your character. And I kind of like when you pick a character, you're probably picking them with an ascendancy in mind. And that is basically the class. I feel like the ascendancy not being at the start of the game, but being like in Act 2, which is like, I don't know, maybe 10 hours in. I think that gives you enough time to play with your character, see the abilities that you like, see what abilities you don't like, and then you get to your ascendancy, and then you can like, oh, this will give you a direction. Like, all right, I kind of like these Warcry abilities I've been using. Maybe I want to do that. Or I don't really like the Warcry abilities, but I do really like, oh yeah, doing stunning enemies and just hitting them really big with big attacks. You know, getting all this one is it's insanely powerful, but it's a little boring. But yeah, slam skills are ancestrally boosted, so they're bigger. Like, I feel like it gives you time to kind of decide what you want to go when you're finally given that choice. And I think that it's okay that this isn't a choice that you could take back, because this is basically the class you pick. You pick a warrior, but really when you pick a warrior, you're choosing ahead of time to either pick a Titan or a Warbringer. Or, you know, you pick a witch, you're picking an infernalist or the blood mage, you know? So I actually think it's a pretty reasonable thing, and it could be fun as a initial thing, as a thing that is your class identity, right? Because the other thing you can't take back is your starting class, but you can always start a new character 5 minutes in because you picked the wrong thing. But because it only affects where you start on the skill tree, and it's true, maybe you're not going to ever go over here. Maybe the warrior is never going to branch into the monk skill tree. Because you have so much freedom about here and it only affects your starting point, the fact that these are like the really what you're choosing when you pick your class, I kind of like that is irreversible. Just like your initial class choice is irreversible, this is basically an extension of your first class choice. Now, again, if they add the ability to respec ascendancies, I'm not going to be like, wow, you've ruined my game. This game design is ruined. Like, I honestly don't care. I think it's fine. But I also totally understand if they don't want to, because this is something that I think is reasonable to make it permanently locked. And typically I'm against that. Like, I think respec should be a little bit cheaper even still. I think it should be a little more free to respec, because a lot of times I'm like, all right, I want to see how this ability works or whatever with this ability. And I do it. I'm like, okay, that doesn't really work. Despec these, spec into these. Okay, how does this work with that? Okay, that's okay, but I want to try this. So I'll end up spending like a lot of gold on respecking just to try 1 or 2 different nodes. So I would like to see that a little bit cheaper, but as far as ascendancies themselves go, I think it's just pretty reasonable. But if you disagree with me, that is also understandable, and GGG is going to listen to the majority, so I'm not going to cry if they do. Okay, number 4. I actually really like getting to go back to the merchants after leveling up in the campaign to look for gear. I think this is one that I've heard a lot of people say they don't like. However, I've been a big fan of it. So a lot of people are like, going to the town is cancer. You never want to have to go back to town. You just want to, you know, blast. In a sense, I can understand that. But you know what I dislike more than merchants selling good gear is merchants selling bad gear. Like, in almost every ARPG I've played, I feel like you go to the merchants, you're like, they just sell dog shit all the time. Like, I don't care about anything they sell usually. And maybe I don't have enough experience with other ARPGs, but I've always felt like when I go to merchants, like sometimes 1 out of 1,000 times, I'm like, oh wow, they actually have a good something here. This one actually has 1 level to melee skills at level 10. That's okay. But like now I feel like whenever I level up, the way it feels to me is if I teleport back to town, it's like I just killed like 30 rare monsters. When I hit that, boom, that level up, it's like I just killed 30 rare monsters because all of the merchants just refilled with randomized relevant gear. It's true they don't have as much yellows at this stage as you would find on that many rare monsters, but as you get later into the game, they drop more yellows. But I think it's like really, really nice. I wonder if these are actually leveled to me at all. No, they're level 15. It's for me, it's like a big giant loot pinata when I come back to town, because I don't mind coming back to town for a minute. It's like they just have a bunch of really nice gear. I think it's better than the alternative of them having terrible gear. Maybe the argument is you shouldn't have to, because you should find more gear. That's fine. If they want to boost normal gear drops, that's one thing. But I just like coming back to town and checking it out. There's so many times I find upgrades here. I think it feels really good. I love it when a merchant has a purpose. If a merchant doesn't sell gear that I want, then why are you selling gear at all? So them having the chance to sell that gear, I think, is just pretty cool. It feels like a big reward for leveling up. Now that completely ends once you get to the post game. I feel like the merchants then suck, and now again I'll check the merchants and I'm never happy. Like the expedition merchants are the exception, but for the most part the merchants just sell things that aren't leveled enough for me to care about, and I find so much good gear on maps it doesn't matter. So now it's like I think it's actually would be nice if they kept selling relatively good gear even into the late game. But in the campaign, I thought it was just a lot of fun. When you level up, it's like you just got, not only do you get a passive point, not only do you get to sometimes upgrade your skills, you get to go back and see a big table of a bunch of gear. And like, yeah, I guess if you're in like a really big hurry, you're just like, oh, okay, I just want to see things with minion. Okay, another one minion, bye. I personally just like looking like, all right, is there anything here that's good? Is there anything here I could buy and then sell to other people for a couple exalts and make some money? I'm like, oh, I bet I can, this is only level 14. This has 1 fire spells. I could throw a couple blue orbs into that, see if I can make something that's worth selling. +2 to all spells, right? Like, okay, maybe we buy this and then we add a orb to it, right? Now it's got 13% extra damage as fire damage. And now we're going to try to sell it for 5 exalts or something. I'm not going to, because I don't want to make space. But I enjoy that personally. I think it's a really fun aspect of the game when you're going through the campaign. Also, the gambling is a lot of fun as well. Although I would like them to drop more, just like twice as much gold, because I just feel like I never actually have enough to reasonably do this. I'm at 126,000 and I play a lot. And if I buy a couple amulets, like it goes down so fast. I wouldn't normally buy it from here, but the expensive amulets at the other towns are way more expensive. I saved it for last, probably the hottest take. I think Trial of Sekhemas is the single most fun content in the entire game, and for me I would say it's not even close, with Expedition being close as the closest second. I think Expedition is incredibly fun, but I don't think that's a hot take. I think a lot of people like Expedition, unless I'm crazy. Trial of Sekhemas, though, I see a lot of hate on. I think that this is like genuinely the most fun content to play and to grind. Now there is a caveat here, there is an asterisk or whatever. I really don't think this should be how you get your ascendancies. If they want it to be with your ascendancies, make it so you don't lose your token, right? Make it so you don't lose this when you go in. Just make it so, I don't know, you could enter for free with like, oh, 50% less item rarity, 50% less experience gained. Yes, you can ascend or something. I don't know. That's still like, the idea is like, I don't think ascending should be as hard as it is, but I don't think that's a hot take. I think ascending, even though I have all my ascendancies and I had a lot of fun getting it. Again, this is like this is the main reason you choose an initial class, because otherwise it's just where you start on the skill tree. Like, this is the main reason. Once you get these, like, this is a huge part of your decision as a player, is you're building around these ascendancies. You know, you're coming up with cool ideas. So having it behind such a long process that is not hard necessarily, but it is like reasonably difficult for a lot of players, I think is a mistake. But as far as the content itself, just playing the content, this is so much fun. It's my favorite thing to grind in the game, especially because like, not only is the actual individual moment-to-moment gameplay fun, because sometimes you have a, you know, all right, now because I liked a lot of the Binding of Isaac, all right, so it's a little bit of a roguelike element, which I think is just really good. But it's like, all right, I have to do a escape trial. I have to hit all these death crystals while trying to run through enemies and not let them kill me. I have to now do an hourglass survival challenge. I have to do a gauntlet where I have to run through traps. I actually don't mind those. I try to avoid them because I suck at them, but I don't mind them. or I just have to go hunt down elite enemies, you know, things like that. There are a lot of the moment-to-moment, room-to-room gameplay changes up enough, and it just keeps, it's fun and interesting. Even if I've done it 10 times, I think it's kind of fun. Then you start adding the, you know, the negatives and the positives. It's just like, it's fun to need to adapt to the negatives, and it's fun to get these powerful positives that make you way stronger than you are outside of the trial. Now, again, I think the negatives get really annoying when you're going for your ascendancy and you're like, fuck, the room before I lost a bunch of my whatever, you know, I got it so enemies deal double damage and now I have half of my max honor and I'm gonna die to one hit to the boss. That sucks, I'll admit, because that's annoying. But if you're just playing it for fun, after your ascendancies, you get just so much currency, you get good gear, you get good experience, you get to have fun moment-to-moment gameplay, and it has its own separate gearing system with this relics, where you get to basically build your run how you want. Now, I don't really like that there is a honor resist mechanic. That's not my favorite, because I feel like that just takes up so many slots. Like, yeah, you get 75% honor resist. There's nothing here that says you should have 75 honor resist, that 75 is the cap. I think that they just expect players to know that, and I wouldn't have assumed that if it wasn't for the fact that I watched POE videos, and people are like, yeah, make sure you get 75% honor resist. So I kind of want them to take honor resist out and just make it like a passive 75% default or something, because if everyone's gonna build for that, then why even have it? But besides that, the relic system is really cool, right? You could either go for getting better keys, so you can get all the gold chest, or you can make it so you could just get, you know, other ways to increase your defense with life. More relics if you want a relic farm. 30% honor resistance, that one's pretty good. I already have better ones that are in a different guy, different character's account right now. But yeah, then you can just make it so monsters take more damage. You could restore honor on room completion. There's ones that make it so it's like every time you complete a room, you get some the holy water. Ones that let you avoid afflictions. This one allows you to farm a unique ring or something. So like this whole alternative gearing system is incredibly fun. The content is fun. The building your run together is fun. Pretty much everything about this, I think, is the most fun content in the entire game. The Trial of Chaos is fine. I think the Trial of Chaos is fun. I don't really do that one as much. It's more short and sweet, and I actually look forward to doing it in the campaign to get my second ascendancy, because I think it is short, sweet, and it's pretty fun. But I think this is like such a fun replayable form of content that I really love to do. But again, with the side thing, that I don't think that your ascendancy should be tied to it directly. I think ascendancy should become something totally different if possible. It probably never will be, but at least I want them to add some sort of ascendancy mode where it's just much easier to get your ascendancies. I don't think that should be out of all the things in the game that are like achievements, I don't think getting your main class identity skill points should be an achievement. I think that this should be basically given through time, and that achievements should be other things in the game, you know, unique gear, things like that, you know, things that are like getting uniques in terms of gear or cosmetics or other forms of power, I think is totally fine. But this is like class identity and power fantasy. I think this should not be tied behind, maybe not giving it to you for free, but like really shouldn't be something you have to work hard to get. I think every player should be able to very reasonably get it. And even though I didn't find it very hard, I know a lot of players have found it very hard. I mean, I beat it with a melee warrior, no problem, but that was only Ascendancy 1, right? Don't get me, I'm not even going to try Ascendancy 4 with that beast. Holy shit. But yeah, that's part of the problem. But again, repeating myself, it's a lot of fun. So that is my 5 hot takes for the game. Yeah, let me know what you agree with, what you disagree with. I'm hoping the majority of players disagree with each aspect of this, because that's why they're considered hot takes. I'm not trying to, there's a lot of things I could say about, you know, gearing and currency and just overall, you know, lack of, I guess, class diversity. There's all kinds of things that I could say that, like, oh, they aren't my favorite about the game right now. But I feel like a lot of people agree with a ton of stuff, like armor's too weak. As someone that's pure, that's armor and HP, like I'm really feeling it on tier 15 maps. Like I'm just getting one shot by everything. So I would like, so yeah, but I think a lot of people disagree with that. So I try to pick things that I thought the average player, or, you know, 51% of players wouldn't necessarily agree with, and try to explain to them why I feel that way. Anyway, that's all for today, guys. Thank you very much. Purplatypus is Purplatypus. See you on the flip-flops. Bye!
On the rise, watch the views go up.